Hello and welcome everybody to another online lecture with the Natural Dog Expo. So today is Saturday, April the 27th, 2024. It's 11 o'clock and we are here with Dr. Tom Lonsdale, arguably the father of raw feeding, certainly in my opinion. And he's going to talk to us today about raw meaty bones. But before we do that, we have to say a huge thank you to our sponsors, Raw and Lucellin, sponsoring the Natural Dog Expo. And guess what? Here I have a rather large meaty, I believe, lamb ribs. This is a pack of lamb ribs that I got from Raw. Fusa is now looking at me and licking her lips. She knows the sound of this plastic. Anyway, they're not defrosted, so I won't be giving them to her right now, but I just wanted to show you that this is what you get from Raw when you order lamb ribs. So yeah, Fusa's had these before, and she does strip them, but she chomps them as well. Now, I am going to go and put that in the freezer, but because I've got my trusty bottle of Lucellin here, what I do, of course, is I now take off the lid, spray my hands, okay, and that means I can now use my computer again without getting any bacteria on the screen or on the keys. So I'm going to stop the share. So Lucellin is great for that. If you just need something in your pocket that you can just quickly spray. I'm going to admit the rest of our lovely gang of delegates into the live. Here they all arrive. And Tom, if you want to start sharing your screen.
Yeah, right.
We'll see.
Says host disabled participant screen sharing.
Let me just allow that. Apologies. There we are. You're able to do that now.
Yes. Well, here we go.
Brilliant. Thank you.
And from the beginning, right. How's that looking?
Perfect.
Can you hear me?
We can.
You can hear?
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, okay, we're after 11, after 8 our time. Excuse me. So I guess it's okay to make a start.
Yep.
Would that be right?
Yep.
Yeah. Wonderful, wonderful. Well, how lucky am I to be able to talk with you all the way over there in the UK about such an important subject. Raw meaty bones promote health. It's the thing that turns on the dogs and cats. That's the thing that motivates them. And it motivates me to be talking about it. So fantastic. In fact, I've been, some might say, like a dog with a bone, a bit obsessive about this ever since 1991, when we really turned up the heat. Prior to that, we were sort of learning, but from 1991 onwards, we knew without any shadow of a doubt the importance of raw meaty bones to promote health of our carnivores. So before we go much further, thank you to Caroline for introducing me as the father of the raw meaty bones diet. That's very kind. Probably more accurately to say I'm the grandfather. We've been at it for a long time and I'm now very old. But the information doesn't change. In fact, the dogs have been trying to tell us this important information for long enough, and we've unfortunately ignored them or trivialized it or just wafted off and left them to it without thinking anymore. Look, it's time we reasserted the importance of this for the carnivores under our care. So what I propose to do is start with a good news story, a success story. I'm going to introduce you to Dr. May Yam. Now, May Yam was a young vet from Melbourne. Leastways, she trained in Melbourne. Originally, she was from Hong Kong. She came to work for me as a locum, and she'd come and go, and she would never really quite committed either to working in the practice or working with me, or fully understanding what was going on. And well, she did her job alongside, just as good as any other young vet. And so we had a working relationship. But things did improve when she went to Norway with her boyfriend to see the Northern Lights. And she sent me this lovely, delightful photo of her sitting in a cafe somewhere doing her homework. Dr. May, was turning round. She was coming to terms with the fact that raw meaty bones promote health, and that this is critical to the care of carnivores under our care. And well, it wasn't long after that she came back, and she and the boyfriend came to me one day. In fact, they scheduled a dinner in a Swiss restaurant and announced that they wanted to buy my practice. Yeah, that was the turnaround from being an indoctrinated, inculcated, brainwashed young vet out of this Melbourne vet school to understanding the importance and wanting to buy the practice. So look, I might let Dr. May take up the story from here, because now that she is the owner of the Bligh Park Pet Health Centre, my last practice that she bought off me, she's continued and well, enlarged and what should I say, enhanced the raw meaty bones message. And I'll show you her introductory video. I have to take my headset off for this moment so that you can hear the soundtrack, and I'll rejoin you after Dr. May has told you about how important it is.
We're a small animal practice that provides the dogs. Of sick animals is our stock trade. But the thing that gets us most excited is the prevention of disease and maintenance of good health. Just like ourselves, the first essential is a healthy natural diet. And for our pets, it is a raw meat bones diet. Carnivores are happiest when they're ripping, tearing, chewing on their real food. This allows them to fulfill their natural instincts, consume the optimal nutrients, achieve the peak condition, and strengthen their immunity. Here we have Bubba and Ron, the clinic's mascots. They'll show you their pearly white teeth. Feeding on raw meaty bones keep them free of periodontal disease, which is the key to our pets' health. Feed the puppies and kittens, the old dogs and cats, their natural diet, and the need for vet visits decline. All we are passionate about is seeing healthy animals changing their lives for the better. We've got videos on YouTube, photos, and even supplies to get you started. We hope you'll join us on the quest for better pet health. Welcome.
So there we are. Good. I hope you could hear the soundtrack on there okay. Oh, look, wants to keep coming back. I'm sorry. Go away. There we are. We'll try that. So, okay. Dr. May made the transition. She's now making a business of it. She's probably unique in the whole wide world, that she leads with raw meaty bones as the foundation for the good health of all of her patients. That's what she wants to see. She has a freezer room decked out with all sorts of goodies, and pig's trotters and chicken frames, quail, and rabbit heads, whole rabbits, and so on. This indeed is the way of the future, because that's the real medicine for the animals under our care. Right. Okay. Now, most of you, I suspect, in the small group we've got here now are already feeding raw meaty bones, but bear with me, because we have a responsibility to teach others how to make a start. And making a start is not so easy. As I discovered in the early days, in the 1980s, I was nervous. I was concerned because I was going against the grain. I was going against the conventional wisdom that was taught in the veterinary school, which was beamed down the TV tube into living rooms everywhere, that the way to feed cats and dogs was out of the can and the packet. The veterinary schools taught that. The veterinary board was known to take exception to anyone who started to do things in a otherwise unconventional way. So I found it very difficult, and so and you can find that article there at the bottom, thepetfoodcon.com, so people can go back to these places. What do you need to do to get started and to be secure in your progress? Unlearn, start again. That's my best advice to everybody, if they can. Now, I know people are pretty attached to their thoughts and belief systems and the ideas that they've grown up with and accumulated throughout their life. But when you're taking on something as maybe controversial and confronting as switching animals completely off junk food onto a diet of raw meaty bones, then it's better that you don't have a cluttered mind. So if you can't unlearn, then the least ways, put stuff in suspense, put it on the shelf and leave it there. Start again. And then, well, you've probably seen the learning pyramid. Look at the top there, lecture, 5% value. Oh dear, we're condemned from the outset, right from the get-go. This is a lecture and we're only going to get 5% benefit. That's right. But hopefully it's going to be a trigger for you to then go on to do some reading. Look at the audio visuals at thepetfood.com. Demonstrations. I'm afraid I can't run any demonstrations from here, but you can have discussion. You can have discussion amongst yourselves. Get going. Throw the raw meaty bones on the ground and then let your dog or cat teach you the essence of what's going on. But ultimately, teach one another. And for us, the pioneers in this area, that's what we have to do. And then you teach others who in turn teach others. And so it goes on. And so we proliferate. And soon, before you know it, everybody will understand the essential aspects of feeding raw meaty bones. All right, let's ask ourselves, what is the job of carnivores in the wild? Because that is what gives us our cue, gives us the clues as to what we need to do for carnivores in our zoos without bars. We're effectively zookeepers. And we've got to do the right thing by the carnivores under our care. How does the zookeeper or the safari park owner understand what he has to feed his carnivores? Well, he looks at what they do in the wild, and we should do the same. So that's what they do. That's what carnivores are here for. They're not here just to beautify the place. I mean, they are. They're really magnificent creatures with unbelievable the way nature has designed them with their incredibly athletic bodies and keen senses and wonderful ethology. They're here for a job, to do the job of regulating the numbers of herbivores and other species. Gee, and it's a pretty dangerous job too. It's a very important job, but they take it very seriously. Can you imagine if your dinner came rushing at you, weighing 1,000 kilos, ready to kill you if it possibly could? But it's so important to the lion pride and pretty much to the pack of wolves who similarly are going to chase a deer, a bison, a moose, and liable to get kicked in the teeth. It's very important that they do their job, because if they do their job well, they get the reward that they're after. Yes, they're after the reward. What is it that drives them? It's the reward. And that's the reward. Pure and simple. Absolutely essential. The birthright of all carnivores, cats and dogs and ferrets that you might have at home. The ripping, tearing, and crunching raw meaty bones. That's the foundation. It's the key to the carnivore code. It's what they're about. And just for instance, here's George, a diabetic cat who came to us, who was falling apart with a shocking case of diabetes mellitus. And he had bad teeth as well, big teeth and gums. In fact, pretty much the only treatment we gave him was what you see there, the raw chicken frames and the raw rabbit head. So he was finally getting his reward and curing his diseases. Anyway, I said to Caroline that I'll base this talk on a couple of papers, and we'll start off with this one. Raw meaty bones promote health. Yeah, that's it. That's where the name first came from, and you can see under the yellow line at the top, 23rd of July, 1992. It was published in the Control and Therapy, which is this magazine, but back then it was a bit more rudimentary. And we're talking about what happened with a couple of dogs, the Zubricki Terriers, that came to us on the 6th of August, 1991. At the time of annual vaccination, it was determined we should be entirely resolute in our dealings. These dogs had previously had all sorts of problems. A recurrent complaint was that Tuffy had attacks of the scurries, variously determined to be hyperventilation or bouts of mad anxiety. We had several vets in our practice at that time. We all came up with different theories because the poor dog was brought into us on regular occasions. And nobody had any real clue, and the scurries and the general hyperventilation continued up until August 91, at the time of annual vaccination. I remember the owner came in clutching the two dogs. Vaccinations, it's this routine rubbish that gets done in all the veterinary clinics. And I said, oh, look, this is not good enough. I know you're here for a routine thing, but I really would like to push the point here with these two dogs. I'm concerned about their stinky breath and the sore gums and the fact that you occasionally feed a raw meaty bone, but not all the time. Can we please book your dogs in and pull out the bad teeth, which ended up being quite a lot of bad teeth. But thereafter, we want you to feed a raw meaty bone daily, every day. That is going to be the staple of the diet. Well, the transformation. We started off with Tuffy and Blossom, both with depressed immune system, their white cell count for 5.1 and 5.2, when it should have been between 6 and 14. Anyway, we wanted to do a repeat blood test subsequently to find out more. But alas, the owner couldn't be persuaded to come back. The dogs had mended, fixed. Right. The raw meaty bones had worked wonders, and they had promoted health to the point where the owner saw no reason to go back to the vet. One day I was able to persuade her to come back. We did the blood tests, and sure enough, the immune system was back into the normal range. White blood cells 8.5 and 8.2, right plumb slap bang in the middle of the so-called normal range. So these animals were being mended inside out, and their coats were glossy, and everything had improved quite dramatically. Right, well, this was of great significance and needed to be communicated to the wider veterinary community and the wider community more generally. And in that paper, we basically wrote down the 3 parts of the 3-part test. Anyone at all who talks to you about diet should be emphasizing these three things. Carnivores to have a full belly of whole prey or something akin to the same on a regular basis. In so doing, they will maintain a pearly white set of teeth and salmon pink gums. Critical, absolutely critical feature of carnivore biology. And given that we've now understood the gravity of the situation where junk, canned and dry, and bath and prey model and minces do nothing to maintain a pearly white set of teeth and salmon pink gums, then we've got to stand against any of those folks who want to maintain their junk pet food industry and in turn their veterinary alliance. Because it's not good enough just to say, I'm all right, Jack, I'm feeding my dog and cat adequately, and ignore the plight of all the others. We, the informed minority, need to spread this wonderful message of good health. So we're talking about a raw meaty bones diet. We're not talking about a raw diet. We're not talking about a bath diet. We're not talking about a prey model diet. All of those things involve processing. No, the carnivores have got to do the processing. They've got to use their processors. And this is Podge, 3 years of age. I got this photo when he was chasing rabbits through the bush one day. It was a hot day, so poor dog, but he wanted to chase the rabbit. And he stood there panting for a full 10 or 15 minutes, a long time enough for me to run away, get the camera, come back and take photos of Podge's open mouth. But look, there you are, 3-year-old open mouth, and look at the state of his teeth and gums, because he had been fed raw meaty bones every day of his life. No broken teeth, of course, that they like to go on with and employ the scaremongering. None of that, nothing of the sort. Not even, no worn teeth either. But they had dismembered raw meaty bones for 3 years, every day for 3 years. Okay, so we then turn to the next paper. And what we'll do is just go forward, and that's also at rawmeatybones.com, papers, and you can find it there. Okay, this word at the bottom. Right. This paper was called Raw Meaty Bones Essentials. And Dr. Richard Malik, who was an academic at the University of Sydney and also an editor at the Centre for Veterinary Education, said to me, Tom, look, they're not getting it. It's 2018 by this time. He said, I know it's in your book, but they're not getting it. Can you write it down again? What's so important about raw meaty bones? Well, the idea had been swirling around for long enough, and that we understood it, that food is medicine, the old Hippocrates understanding that goes back 2,000 years. But a little bit of careful thought, and we start to see actually that it's the medicinal modes of action that drives the carnivore to want to rip and tear and chew and gnaw at raw meaty bones. They get high. Look, number one, feeding frenzy, release of endorphins, immune stimulation, and that's therapeutic. So they are absolutely intent on getting that chemical high. The physical exercise does the same. Release of endorphins, immune stimulation, that's therapeutic. That's what keeps them healthy. Tooth cleaning, absolutely vital. This lecture today is not about periodontal disease, but it could be. We could talk about that for several hours. But anyway, just take it from me that the tooth cleaning and the maintenance of good health of the gums primarily is absolutely critical in the biology of the carnivore. And with all this activity and the stimulation of the brain, also at the same time, the stomach is being advised that something's on the way down. So the stomach is getting ready, the gut enzymes are being produced, and the motility is being optimized. And then you can see natural food contains the intracellular enzymes, so the pancreas is spared. The pancreas doesn't have to produce much in the way of enzymes because they're already in the cells. of the food. As you know, if you leave a steak out on a kitchen bench on a warm summer's day, come back a few hours later and it's starting to run away. It's just a mush. And that's to do with the enzymes dissolving the meat. And the probiotics, the bacteria that come with the meat, vitally important for improving and adding to the microbiome in the gastrointestinal tract and so on. Substrate conditioning of the colon environment to a healthy balance of bacteria. Behavioral conditioning. The animals are content. Having been through this whole process, they think they're the king of the jungle, that they've done a great job. They've brought down their prey, they've then consumed it. They are complete. They are content. Instead of being a raging, pacing creature that nobody can get near, they become just wonderfully passive companions. Dog trainers tell me, good dog trainers tell me, that they can't even begin to start training dogs until those dogs are properly fed. And then we end up at the end there, natural array of biochemicals, nutrition in the commonly used sense. Although what passes for nutrition these days, I see it more as chemical engineering, where people try and put together the different components, and then they say we've got a complete and balanced and scientifically formulated diet. That's a whole bunch of nonsense, and of course they've blundered straight past all the other things on that list, and gone straight to their number 9, biochemicals. It is so bad. Okay, so we want to know what to do in terms of the particular ingredients. I'm not going to go through that in any detail here today. I'm just going to point you to a couple of sites on the internet. The Raw Meaty Bones Diet for Dogs. Simply go to the petfoodcon.com and have a read, have a look. Don't feel that you have to do everything all at once. Quite a lot of my clients only ever fed chicken. Now, it's not something that I was recommending, but people are lazy and they're poor and they're time poor and they want to keep things simple, and they find that chicken frames, the same as what little Midge up here is eating, and that's a chicken frame, that was pretty much the staple diet for Midge. And you can see the size of that. You can see the back of the chicken frame, and you can see that. Is that the parson's nose or is it the neck end? I'm not sure. I think that's the parson's nose. Anyway, you can see the size of the chicken frame relative to the size of the dog. And you want something about that order so that she, in this case, little Midge, is going to spend time ripping and tearing all the way around. Lower down, you can see a Staffordshire Bull Terrier with a turkey frame after most of the meat has been cut off for human consumption. So that's the sort of thing, cheap and easy. It's not ideal, but you know, we have not been able to identify any significant difference between the animals that are being fed on prey complete with fur, feathers, and fins, as opposed to this partially processed food that we see on the screen here now. No doubt there is a difference, but it's marginal by comparison with the huge gulf, the huge difference between feeding appropriate raw meaty bones such as this and out of the can or packet. What else might you feed? Well, as long as it's big, in big pieces that are going to challenge well, I say patient because I see dogs as patients and cats as patients, but for you, you see them as companions. So, you know, always a big lump. So it challenges them. I'm not talking about a big bone, but a big lump of raw meaty bones. So earlier, Caroline was showing us the lamb ribs. Fabulous. Excellent. Great idea. Sheep's heads. There's a thought for you. Although let me just say that in the wild, the head tends to get left on the larger prey. A wolf pack will leave the head, the spine, the long bones before they wander off in search of the next meal. But in so doing, they will have consumed the innards, except not the stomach contents, not the colon contents. No, they get shaken out. So they will have eaten the intestines, they will have eaten the soft organs inside. Sure, they will eat them first. My view is that that's because you and I would always pick the low-hanging fruit first. They will eat the soft parts of the prey first before they settle down to the ripping and tearing and gnawing that they absolutely must do. So, okay, occasionally you might throw a lump of liver out to your dog or cat, a chicken gizzard, that sort of thing. But the less that things are processed, the better for your carnivores. Now, in bygone times, packs of carnivores would hunt down humans. Yeah, we were prey species too, omnivores. And if we got unlucky and got ambushed by a pack of wolves or some other carnivore species, then we might finish up in the belly of those carnivores. Along the way, they would eat us and our stomach contents too. So, well, you don't need to wait for your dog to eat you and your stomach contents. You can give the stomach contents off your plate. Why not? Of course, there's a few provisos. Don't give garlic, don't give onions, don't give chocolate, don't give sharp cooked bones. But overall, anything that you can eat, they can eat. And so within moderation, but no one's going to feed exclusively table scraps, although if you do, your dog will be happier and healthier than if it fed out of the can or packet. And actually, it's worth making an aside here. One of the reasons that the raw, the prey model, and the buff mob seem to gain success is because what they persuade people to do is stop feeding out of the can and packet. And that's where the big leap in good health comes from. Stopping doing the bad stuff. Same as you, if you bash your head on the wall, taking an aspirin won't help. But if you just stop bashing your head, that's where you get a major lift in the way you feel. So that, in fact, people, is why a whole lot of disparate dietary regimes appear to do good. Not so much the dietary regime, it's the fact that people have been persuaded not to do the dreadful harm that comes out of feeding out of the can and the packet. So stop feeding out of the can and the packet. Number one, major benefit. Number two, add in the raw meaty bones. But don't forget, if that poor dog or cat has had any length of time not using a toothbrush, I beg your pardon, then near guaranteed it will have mouth disease of some form or other, and especially if it's got a distorted, deformed mouth, such as a French bulldog or a pug or a Pekingese or a whippet or any of those with particularly long, sharp noses and so on. So it's part of our obligation when we change these animals over from the junk food that we get their teeth and gums sorted out at the same time. Don't leave them to continue to suffer, thinking that having changed them to raw meaty bones, that's enough. It will be enough to maintain as good a health as you can keep, ultimately, but don't forget to get a thorough dental cleaning and extractions if needs be at the same time. Same with your cat. Feed your cat raw meaty bones for wonderful good health. And there is Ron, that's May's cat. And we're there posing for the camera. And I'm holding a quail body. That's what that is. Yeah, so I'm feeding the quail. So go there, have a look at the sort of things. Rabbit heads, quail, whole fish, chicken wings, chicken necks, chicken legs are okay for pussycats. And ideally, though, with fur, feathers, and fins, if you can manage it. All right, let's just have a look at a few. Here we are. We've got Needle and Sam. Son Tom has been up into the hills and shot a deer, and he brought it back. And there they are, foot on, ripping and tearing and chewing, stimulating their brain chemicals, cleaning and flossing their teeth, and having a right good time. Okay, we've got a pack of dingoes here. Don't worry about the flies. They're always around here in Australia. Dingoes, domestic dogs that went feral. They were brought over from Southeast Asia about 5,000 years ago, and now they roam the arid interior of Australia and up into the high country of the snowy mountains. And they live a feral life, feeding, for the most part, on kangaroos. Interesting fact that if they've got a choice and if their pack structure is strong enough, they would always opt for kangaroos over and above the woolly sheep. Woolly sheep are easier to catch, I'll grant you that. But the dingoes know that game meat, nice, lean game meat, is better for them. So here we've got a remains of a rabbit carcass. The local neighborhood cat had been catching rabbits in my hay shed, and this is the remains. And I think you can sort of see up here, there's the remains of an ear. Here's the stomach. There's a kidney down here. This is the innards of the colon. And it's eaten the head and eaten all the way back. But these meaty back legs is left for another year. Not another year, I beg your pardon, another day. Bit out of focus, this one, but what does it tell us? Well, look at the glossy coat on the Rottweiler. And he's got a bunny rabbit, a blue bunny rabbit. Just here, the colon. So they're not eating the vegetable contents in the body. And here we've got the liver. No, the liver, I beg your pardon. Why did I say that? Beg your pardon. That's the stomach. Silly me. Right, colon and stomach. Discarded, not eaten, but absolutely intent on eating the rest of the rabbit. So important. And you can see, there you are, 20th of July, 2002. So that's 22 years old now, that slide. And I've been putting it up there for a long time. And you can see how important it is to those two border collie puppies that they want. Each of them wants that prize, the chicken wing. Ideally, of course, we would have been feeding something rather larger, but not to worry. They're better off on that than anything in the can or the packet. Okay, Saluki puppy. And with a chicken, except it's not. It's a trophy. The innards have been eaten out. So it's taken out all the innards and the soft parts of the body from the inside out. And it's just, in fact, if you look here, you can see how the meat has been eaten off that leg. Can you see? And here are the toes down here. So this is the trophy, and it's saying, look at me, I'm a big, strong, terrific carnivore, king of the jungle. I brought down a chicken, and I'm now going to go off and put it somewhere, cache it somewhere, and return to it another day. But it has left the feet, the head, the neck, and the wings. They're not eaten. So, unfortunately, so many cats and dogs are fed necks with skin and feathers gone, leg meat with in short sections, and of course wings without the feathers. So these are the sort of things that just get scoffed down pretty much whole in many instances. Yeah, people feed Great Danes and the like chicken necks. No good at all. No. Okay, so when they're given the opportunity with a whole carcass, this is how they go about it. They eat out the innards, they eat off the meat, and that ripping and tearing. They don't eat all the bone, they eat some of it. Here we are, here's Jed enjoying a mullet, and I'm enjoying feeding him. it's a wonderful pleasure to be able to feed your carnivore on the natural diet and hear them crunching the meat and bone, and look at the bright eye and the quality of his coat. And he's a top animal. I'm sad to say, of course, it's many years ago and he's not with us anymore, but it's great to see him there on the screen. All right. 28 whippet pups, 1 kangaroo. And what we've got, and I think, and I'm just checking, there we are. They're hard at it and they can't get enough of it. And there's 28 of them, 1 kangaroo, and 10 minutes later, that's what we got. Okay, just the long bones, the spine, and over here, a large lump of pelt, which they'll probably chew on over the coming hours. But otherwise, they've ripped and torn at that carcass, cleaned their teeth, got food down into their bellies, and are on the way to being wonderfully healthy adult whippets. Well, there we are, people. So I would like to draw the talk to a close now, or leastways with the next slide. I think Caroline would like to have a few words before I wind up totally. So maybe I can hand the microphone back to Caroline, who will just say a few parting words. Is that right?
Well, thanks, Tom. We do have some questions in the chat. Are you open to staying and answering some of the questions?
Very much so. I've got one more slide after this, but I think you were going to have a few words at this moment to talk about the sponsors and other housekeeping matters.
Yeah, I'm okay. We mentioned them at the beginning, so that's cool.
Okay.
Yeah, let's do
all right
after your final slide then.
Right then. Here we go then. So there we are. That's the take-home message. Down the left-hand side, raw meaty bones promote health. The first and foremost, food and medicine, the most gentle, most effective, safest food and medicine as well for our domestic carnivores. But it's a big subject, simple concept, but a big subject with all the implications. And for those of us who are pioneers, well, we'd be well to remember that it's such a big subject, but we're going to be likely at different stages in the pyramid at any one time. Of course, here we are, lecture today, but tomorrow we'll be looking at small audio visuals. And of course, we'll always be practicing and learning from that practice. No point in practicing the wrong thing, practice the right thing. And spend plenty of time teaching others. And before you know it, we'll spread that good health that all of our carnivore patients deserve. All right, well, thank you. That for me is, and we're going to end this somehow.
If you press stop share.
There we are.
Yeah, press stop.
End the show. Stop share. That's a complex thing to do. How do you do that?
It will be there somewhere. Or I might be able to do it. Let me see. If I go like that. No. It will be in the same place as the start share was.
Right. But I don't.
Let's leave it because I like this whippet. This 10 minutes later on the side here, so we'll leave that while we answer questions. That's all right. Don't worry. It's good.
Well,
let's.
Yeah, I hear what you say, but I mean, it would be better if we interact properly.
Keep looking for the icon. It will be there. Stop share. It might be at the bottom. It might be that you hover at the top and then you suddenly see it as a drop down.
It will. Oh, leave meeting. We don't want to do that. Cancel. No, it's well.
It will be on the Zoom rather than the PowerPoint. It will be on the Zoom.
Yeah.
It won't be
I
on.
sort of.
Yeah. You need to be on.
I grasp it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm on the Zoom there. Right. And it says sign up, sign in.
It will be on where
It,
we're chatting. It will be on that bit. That's that screen. Because at the moment I can see that your icon is on your PowerPoint and not our Zoom. I can see your little cursor moving on your actual PowerPoint. It needs to be on our Zoom.
At the top it says stop share. Should I just hit that?
See what happens when you do. There you go.
It was at the top.
Yeah, sometimes it's at the top, sometimes it's at the bottom. Okay.
Okay.
Right, let's start with these questions. So Sarah has asked, could I ask advice on raw feeding for dogs who are older or have fewer teeth? My dogs had distemper as puppies, so only have distemper teeth, which means they have molars and no canines. I can only seem to give them bits of chicken wings or sprats and pilchards, but then I worry about their calcium intake. So I'm looking for peace of mind for these older dogs of mine. And she's saying she could give them cottage cheese. Calcium in dairy is completely different, really, from a nutritional point of view. So let's see what Tom can say to help you get some raw meaty bones for your dogs.
Number one, I'd say most unlucky to have caught the distemper because that's a disease on the out. Most unusual. Sure, there may be lack of enamel on some of these teeth and so on. They wouldn't have lost teeth as a result of the distemper. We don't know what size or breed the dogs are. And we don't know what foodstuffs can be accessed.
Yeah, we need to know.
Okay.
Sarah,
let me say.
Oh,
what's that?
Sarah also forgot to say they're rescue dogs. Do you know the rough breeds though, Sarah? 18 kg and 14 kg.
Okay. Well, they're pretty big. They will manage very nicely on chicken frames or whole fish. They should have lamb shanks or lamb necks or lamb heads from time to time to rip and tear and gnaw on, because that would take them even longer to work their way around using what teeth they've got remaining. I have generally found, certainly if a dog's got 5 teeth or more, it almost certainly can survive on raw meaty bones. The gums toughen up and they work harder, but they've got plenty of time on their hands and they would love to do that. I mean, dogs will chew plastic. Look at this, how horrendous that is. You know, they will chew on a make-believe bone for hours and hours and hours. So you can chuck them a nice, big, juicy, raw meaty bone, lots of meat on it, of course, to keep them occupied. But otherwise, for making sure they get enough food in their belly, I would suggest chicken carcasses after the meat's been cut off for human consumption. Or if you can't find that, well, then buy chicken at the store. Better again, find spent hens, complete with the feathers, guts, and entrails and all. spent hens, those are the hens that are cold at the end of their laying cycle. And that happens for all the hens that are laying eggs for us. So there's plenty of those if you can access them. So, you know, as a zookeeper, you'll spend a bit of time finding the right source of nutrients for your carnivores under your care. You say they're short of teeth. Well, sounds to me they've probably got enough. And make sure, though, that those that they've got are checked out by the vet, somebody who's competent in the area of veterinary dentistry, which I'm sad to say not every vet is. But there you are. That's the foundation. Go and spend some time looking at the before and after, the case studies at the petfoodcon.com. You can find that page quite readily, quite easily, the case studies, and there's quite a few there, and you can see animals ripping and tearing at raw meaty bones with few, if any, teeth. One dog had got no teeth. He, in order to feed him, is fed chicken mince. That's the whole chicken frame put through the mincer. But nonetheless, he enjoys to chew on rabbit legs. So that for recreation and for stimulating the brain chemicals, and even without teeth, they can still get meat off bone with no teeth. But I mean, that's an abomination. We don't want that. We're at this transition phase where, unfortunately, there are way too many animals that have suffered. For the future, providing all the people watching this video now go out and about and tell 10 other people who tell 10 other people, and before you know it, we'll have a movement and we'll get the dogs and cats of this world back to health.
Yes.
So there we are. That's the story.
I think, yeah, Sarah, it would be good for us to follow how you get on with that. Maybe post on the page, if you can, some pictures and some feedback so that we can all see how they get on in sort of a few weeks, a month, you know. Be lovely, wouldn't it?
Very much so, wouldn't it? Videos, that's what you want.
Yeah.
And you weigh them and you assess their general bodily condition, the quality of their coat, and so on. I had one lady come to me with a couple of Rhodesian Ridgebacks, and I persuaded her to make a complete transition off the junk onto the natural food. The next time I saw her, she said one had got a silky coat and the other had changed colour. Why? What had gone on there? Well, both of them, their coat had changed, had improved, because the coat was then growing in healthy hair follicles, and the healthy hair follicles were living inside healthy skin, and the skin was covering a healthy body with healthy liver and kidneys and heart and immune system. So that's why you see quite radical transformations. When earlier I talked about the raw meaty bones first paper, that was one of the key things with these little dogs with scungy coats and dermatitis and perennial itch, everything fixed up. I won't say that every itchy dog will get better, but the majority do, and their coats improve once we start giving the appropriate food and medicine. Raw meaty bones. Raw meaty bones, key to the carnivore code, the food and medicine combined. Next question.
Okie doke. Right. Now, Kaz, you may need to tell us a little bit more. It says one of your pugs has acid reflux, and if you give her small bones, you say that it makes it worse. So you're obviously looking for how you can feed bones. So when you say small, what exactly do you mean, and what are you meaning makes it worse? I'm guessing here that the animal is bringing up the small bones, or are there any other symptoms that are happening? What do you think, Tom, about animals with acid reflux from eating bone anyway?
Yeah, you saw the Saluki carrying the the chicken skin and neck and head and so on as a trophy, that didn't have acid reflux. That had to tangle with the whole thing right from the beginning to the end. And everything takes time. The stomach is advised that something's on the way down. It's not suddenly swamped with small pieces of meat and bones. It suddenly has to deal with. So you feed larger. Always feed larger. Make that pug work harder. It will thank you for it, and it will enjoy it more. And I suspect that the reflux that you talk about will be a thing of the past. Feed complete with fur, feathers, and fins if you can. Don't feel, though, that you have to change the source of the meat every couple of days and overthink it. There are plenty of wolf packs that only ever eat deer. There are plenty of dingo packs that only ever eat kangaroo, nothing else. So settle on something that's big and suitable, like I'd say half a chicken, and get them going on that. And once you're sure that you're going well, then you can diversify a bit. Then you can experiment. Then you can chuck a lump of liver or a heart down to the dog once in a while. But start off, even for several weeks or months, just chicken frames, just whole fish. There are certain fish that can affect the vitamin D, vitamin E, vitamin B. What am I saying? I'm missing my word. Vitamin B1, thiaminase in the fish. Certain breeds. Carp are one breed, one species of fish that can affect the thiamine. But nearly no one is going to feed exclusively fish unless you happen to be an Eskimo. And then it would seem they have no trouble at all feeding frozen fish. And that goes for everybody, even in temperate climates. You don't need to worry about thawing your raw meaty bones. You just chuck them on the ground. It's up to the dog, whether he eats them frozen or waits for it to thaw. Again, slow it all down, make it a more enjoyable experience. And then if you live in a hot climate, feed in the evening when the flies and the ants have gone to bed, the birds are not going to bother the dog. And the dog can sit there and gnaw away to his heart's content and then sleep through the night. Same for a cat. Don't feel that you need to feed them every day. If you feed more, of course, on the days that you do feed them. But again, just mimic the experience for the wild carnivore. And that period of fasting is beneficial for them. When the anabolic, the catabolic enzymes can start to work in the cells, in the liver, and so on. Get these cycles happening rather than just keep shoving food in at one end and the body's constantly having to deal with that. And of course, we see that when poor animals are fed on the dry stuff, because that dry stuff goes down into the stomach and sits there with no fluid to digest it or soften it. Where does it get the softening fluid from? Well, from the stomach wall. How long does that take? About 12 hours. The dry pebbles sit in the stomach for 12 hours before they're soft enough to travel on down through the bowel. So the animals that are fed the doom nuggets, these pebbles, these stones, this shrapnel, chock-a-block with the stuff from the stomach to the anus, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So they've got raging stomach and gut ache and copious poos and stench, and they have to put up with it.
Okay, so it sounds like Kaz, a bigger carcass frame is going to be something worth trying with your dog. I think also the acid reflux, that's something you asked on the last call, I think, isn't it? So maybe what you need to do is collate all this good advice and put it into a bit of a plan for your dog. Okay, so I'll move to the next question.
Well, learn from the dog, that's right. But I think we heard that it's a pug, so straight away prone to dental disease. And just some periodontal disease can lead to all sorts of strange signs and symptoms in an animal. So Tuffy and Blossom, they had periodontal disease and they were rushing around trying to escape from the pain in the mouth. A very strange case where people had a chihuahua and it used to scream and shriek every time that it passed a poo. And, well, we thought it might have been the anal glands. We thought it might have been a whole host of different things. And we tried different treatments. None of them worked. The dog was, for the most part, fed raw meaty bones, but not exclusively. And one day I said, look, we're going to have the dog in and remove some of these teeth and so on. We removed, I don't know, half a dozen teeth, cleaned up the rest. And the screaming and carrying on when it was passing emotion stopped. End of story. So how was it that defecating was so painful to the animal when it had got a rotten mouth? And it wasn't particularly rotten by comparison with many. So, periodontal disease, even affecting just one tooth, can have surprising other adverse effects through the body. So make sure this little pug has got a healthy mouth. I would recommend.
Okay, so Amanda said, is it normal for a dog to bring up some undigested bone 8 to 12 hours after eating it?
No. So again, I would really rather question the nature of the bone and how much was given. And you'll find this if there's too much bone without sufficient meat and it's all chopped up and the dog scarfs it down real quick and it arrives down in the stomach and there's insufficient digestive enzymes and stomach acid to deal with that amount of bone that suddenly appears there. And so it sits there undigested until eventually the stomach just heaves it back out. So once again, I think it's just think about that Saluki pup. Try and feed along those lines. And then I don't think you'll see that. It's when people feed a lamb shank to a big dog that can crunch, 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 and it gets shards of bone that arrive down in the stomach and don't get digested. So raw meaty bones are the food and medicine of the carnivore. And as with any medicine, they need proper procurement, storage, and administration. And this is something you can't take for granted. You have to do it right. Raw meaty bones are the strongest, most safe, most effective medicine known to us that fix all manner of problems. But as with any medicine, there are aspects that you need to take account of. And so if you see it in those terms, rather than seeing it as just food, see it as having a much bigger role. And the interplay between the carnivore and its food is subtle and dramatic. And we can't just choose aspects of that interplay and disregard other aspects. We've got to think it all through, all of it. And so this is, of course, difficult because anyone can get a dog or a cat. There's no need to have a 6-month educational course. There's no certificate to be had. There's no downside. There's no marking system. And so people just left to their own devices, and then, of course, they're confronted with all the misinformation on the TV and at the vets and in the books and on the podcasts and on and on and on. So it's difficult for people. I know that. That's why you can see these 3 books that I'm advertising behind me here. And you can read those either as paperbacks or ebooks or audiobooks. So go about your business and have the headset on and listen to these books in audio form. And you'll find the accurate information about the precious raw meaty bone food and medicine for the carnivores. Yeah, it's a big deal.
So this is another question that I think you're definitely going to have the answer to. I'm sure you've been asked it loads of times. Do we need to worry about dogs choking on raw bones?
Well, yes, especially if they're chopped up too small. It's nigh on impossible for them to choke if they're feeding on a whole carcass complete with fur, feathers, and fins. There won't be any choking. It's when they're cut up too small and scarfed down, and you increase the risk. Supposing you take a chicken frame and a dog has to eat the chicken, it eats it all the way down, and by the time it gets to the last bit, it's not very big, but it's already got a full belly, and it's just going to be careful how it eats it. Take that same chicken frame, cut it in half, the number of chews that then requires to get down to the last bit is reduced markedly. So the more you process, the more you stuff things up, to the point where if you process it down to the point where you've got swallowable bits, they're the things that get stuck. They hungrily, greedily grab them and throw them back, and they get stuck there, or they get stuck at the base of the heart, or they get stuck on the entrance of the stomach. I think it was a Scandinavian zoo where they threw a lump of meat to a lion. It opened its mouth, grabbed the lump of meat, went right back onto its pharynx, and asphyxiated the lion. Yeah, because instead of having the lump of meat attached to a carcass and spending time ripping and tearing and gnawing, it had swallowed it whole and it got stuck. And that wasn't bone as such, that was just a lump of meat. But certainly, if you feed anything that's cut up too small, and unfortunately, even raw chicken wings and leg bones and so on, they can splinter, become quite sharp, and can get stuck. Alas, we had a pussycat that choked on a quail frame, because the quail frames that we sell, or did sell at that time, the meat had been removed for human consumption, and therefore you're left with a much smaller lump of meat and bone, which the cat just swallowed, got stuck, nobody was there, choked, died. It's going to happen. Wouldn't have happened if that person had fed the quail complete with the feathers and guts and all. But people are not prepared to do that. So we have a much lower standard for our zoos without bars than we have for the real zoos. The real zookeeper wouldn't feed the quail frames with the meat cut off. He'd get the whole quail, the whole body complete. Because his charges have very special needs and they're very expensive. Our companion animals, we love them dearly, but unfortunately people, for the most part, love them only up to the point that they can get their food cheap enough. So there we are. We've got a lot that needs to be changed if we want healthy cats and dogs.
Mhm. Okay, thank you. Thank you. So we have a question from Yaz, and she's explained herself really well, so I'll run through it. It's a bit of a book. After doing really well on raw and healing almost completely from a yeast infection, my 3-year-old terrier Chihuahua mix, 9 years old, still has ongoing digestive problems. Elimination diet has been tried. So he's had diarrhea in the past for a best part of a week and had undigested bone pieces. Yas then switched him to wet food, and the digestive problems stopped. She's tried to swap back to raw again a couple of months later, and the issues have come back. So he's now on cooked food, and does digest that. I guess you mean cooked fresh food, and digests dried things like rabbit's ears, but still cannot digest the raw. She really, really is gutted because she wants him on raw. Or does she just accept that cooked is the way to go for him? She just wants to give a little bit more context. When he didn't get on with the raw, he was on 8% bone content from a different meaty bones. And then she went to complete. So I guess the story is he's on raw meaty bones, didn't get on with it. She's tried the elimination diet thinking it was a protein issue. She has gone to the ground meat way of feeding, and that hasn't worked. So now the dog's on cooked food and dried treats and seems to be fine. But she'd much rather have him back on what you're talking about and your way of feeding. So something went wrong, didn't it?
Mm. Chihuahua mix, did we hear you say?
Terrier Chihuahua mix, 9 years old now.
Right. Well, what's its teeth and gums like? With these various diets, some of which have required ripping and tearing and chewing, and some haven't. And there could be a couple of bad teeth in there which are contributing to this. I would think there's a very good likelihood of that. Can you imagine 9 years without cleaning your teeth adequately? What state you'd be in? And then, well, it just comes down to feeding big. So Terrier Chihuahua mix, I would suggest chicken frames. Now, I'm not saying that there isn't some underlying small intestinal bacterial overgrowth or something of that. There could be a Campylobacter problem. There could be bacterial problems. Of course there can. And, gastrointestinal upsets can take a long time to settle down. It's possible that the dog is allergic to some meat source. Again, I can't really speak about that. But the normal, usual way, for me anyway, to resolve these sort of things is to withhold food for a couple of days, let the bowels settle down, and then feed, well, chicken frames, because they're just cheap and easy and available. You saw the chicken frame that Midge, that Gidget was eating on the feeding raw meaty bones to dogs page. That's about the size of what you need to feed, or larger, whole chickens from the store. Now, it's quite likely they've got salmonella and Campylobacter and E. coli, but ordinarily your dog will come to terms with that fairly rapidly. So the bacteria, such as they are, won't cause ongoing problems. And then you're okay feeding chicken. Ideally, just like the Saluki pup, complete with feathers and guts. the entire bird. And that will slow down this little Chihuahua Terrier cross. It will have great time ripping and tearing and using all of its mouth, stimulating its brain chemicals, telling stomach that something's on the way down. And it will only eat as much as it really wants. It won't overeat. And indeed, it might only want to eat every couple of days. And that whole process will then be much more in harmony with the way nature intended. But look, I know, you know, I feel for the owner. I mean, don't I know? I've had 50 years of this, the last 30 of actually being awake to the problems. The people find it very hard because they're on their own with their dog and they're going to try this and try that, and they're under the influence of all the different people who are in their ear and telling them different things. And so they're confused and don't know, and don't know that the dog has got bad teeth. And even if they go to the vet dismisses it as being normal. And, you know, it's a nightmare. But anyway, for that person, go and re-listen to this lecture today. Go and spend lots of time on my couple of web pages, thepetfoodcon.com and rawmeatybones.com. There's a mile of videos. There's a mile of lectures and articles and information. You know, people who are asking questions of this nature are already striking problems. We've got to solve those, but over and above that, we've got to prevent people getting into this mess in the first place. That's the reality. So everybody listening, they should be feeding their pussycats and puppy dogs from 4 to 6 weeks of age. They should already be on raw meaty bones. Already. And nearly every domestic dog and many domestic cats too have misshapen mouths. So they need more ripping and tearing, not less. And they need it from an early stage because they're all prone to mouth disease when they cut their teeth between 4 and 6 months of age, 4 and 6 weeks of age, the first set. So they have bad teeth then. And if they don't rip and tear, then that inflammation gets set in, and then it gets worse again between 4 and 6 months when they cut through the adult teeth and lose the baby teeth. So, but unfortunately, too many people don't start a raw meaty bone once a week or once a fortnight until the dog is a year old or older. No. All should have started at 4 to 6 weeks of age, before even they got any teeth, so that they can lick and sniff and suck on the raw meaty bones. And before you know it, they've learned how to deal with them, and then they grow up wonderfully healthy and well. But, you know, if they've got a pug-shaped mouth or a Pekingese or a Griffon Terrier or a Italian Greyhound, then they're still going to be prone to getting dental problems. That's the reality. But you'll keep those things at bay to the best by feeding large pieces of raw meaty bones. Yeah, prevention is what we should be about. I mean, sure, we'll deal with it here and now, but it's very difficult for me to deal with individual clinical cases at this sort of distance. So I can only give you more general principles. And then you've got to hope that you've got a vet who's got half a clue. But they're very far and few between. May Yam, you saw at the beginning of this lecture today, she knows. Come on down to New South Wales and see Dr. May.
Okay, thank you. So, final question, I think. Lindsay's mentioned about his boxer dog and that he followed your raw meaty bones diet after the dog had been on kibble for 12 years, but then he switched and followed the diet. Sounds like the dog potentially had cancer from the kibble. I'd love to know if your dog got better from the raw meaty bones diet, because you did say that you really enjoyed feeding whole chickens, whole trouts, and it was a fantastic experience and journey, which is great. It's what Tom wants to hear, I think, as well, what we all do. Anyway, so there's some new dogs coming into the family. They are adopting these dogs, and I think they're age about 4 and on cooked food at the moment. But obviously the plan is to switch them onto the raw meaty bones diet. So really, I think what we're looking for is some advice on how to do that, because they are actually French bulldogs. So what's the best way to switch these dogs?
Well, they're 4 years of age and they've been on cooked, did you say? Okay, well, they're at a considerable disadvantage because of the misshapen mouths and the fact that they've never used a toothbrush for 4 years. You just try it for 4 days and see how you go. So that is a substantial problem that they now are confronted with. Quite often, even on raw meaty bones, the lower incisors often are not anchored properly in the gums because they haven't been used properly and they wobble about. And so oftentimes it's important to just remove all of those lower incisor teeth, which aren't used, don't get used, and so on. But the vet is best able to identify that. Frequently, the gum is really swollen through there and the teeth wobble about because they've lost their connective tissue anchor. That's just the incisors as a result of the misshapen mouth. And then the teeth at the back similarly are crowded and not opposing in the appropriate way. So you've got these problems from the get-go. So the suggestion that whilst raw meaty bones are the food and the medicine and the most miraculous medicine known to us, way better than penicillin or a whole host of other drugs which are only good for treatment of a very narrow spectrum of diseases, raw meaty bones treats everything. But there's a limit to what the raw meaty bones can achieve. So the teeth and gums must be inspected in the first instance. Raw meaty bones will, in fact, fix up quite a lot of dental disease right from the get-go. Dogs that start off with encrusted teeth, brown and discolored and inflamed gums and so on, switch them over onto the appropriate raw meaty bones and you will find considerable improvement. So what I would do if faced with these dogs, I would be examining them conscious. You can only see so much conscious, but you get a fair idea. Identify what you can see and then say, right, switch them over to raw meaty bones and try that for 2 weeks. And then come back and see us again and we'll re-examine, re-investigate what's going on in the mouth and decide if they need to go under the gas and have teeth removed and others cleaned. So that's the approach. Assume that they're sick. Assume that they've got rotten mouths. Assume that they don't know how to deal with raw meaty bones. First thing to do is get them on to raw meaty bones. Cold turkey. You don't need any introductory period or anything like that. Just in the same way that, you know, you eat porridge for breakfast and salmon steaks or goulash for dinner. You know, there's a complete difference twice a day for you. So you can do that with a dog. Of course you can. It could be on the cooked food all its life. And then you say, no, end of that. We're now on raw meaty bones. Start again. Start again. And find that which you can continue with, what you can afford, which you can access. And the usual thing is chicken, but it could be something else. If you can get a supply of rabbits, or even in the UK, pheasants in certain areas, they're like vermin because they release them and then they go and shoot them out of the sky, and then there's lots of them. That sort of thing. Okay. Watch these French bulldogs, see how they go, ripping and tearing and chewing. They'll soon catch on. in general. Some small dogs don't even know how to rip and tear and chew, just like cats. Many cats got no idea. And it can take you a very long time to switch a cat over because they become addicted to the wrong stuff. And making that switch can be very difficult. So that's why I recommend people go to the website and read all about switching cats. And occasionally, with the little dogs, little chihuahuas and Maltese terriers, silkies, we call them silkies, you call them Yorkshire terriers. Some of those little breeds don't instantly take to the natural food, and in which case you've got to try a certain amount of trickery. But back to the French bulldogs, they should be okay, but feed in big pieces. Don't feed in little bits. To make sure that they rip and tear and chew. If by way of getting them to get the taste, yeah, you can feed chopped meat just so that they get that taste. But that's only so that they get the taste. They're not going to choke on bits of chopped meat. It's going to go down through the bowel. They're going to find this tastes good and something to look forward to. And then subsequently you leave it on the bone. But don't be chopping meaty bones into small bits. Don't, for instance, take chicken necks and chop them up into bits. That's asking for trouble. Yeah, but you should be okay. You should be just fine. But bearing in mind, 4 years without using a toothbrush, they gotta have dental disease. Can't escape it. No way. There. Sorry. Hope that helps.
I think that does. I think that does. Just so I think the final question is: it's becoming very clear that getting rid of the dental disease and the periodontal bacteria balance is vital for this. So, do we trust our allopathic vets to we go ahead, we maybe get these dentals and we get these teeth checks, as you're sort of saying, we maybe need to before switching an older dog? Is that really the way forward for us?
Yes. Unfortunately, they tend not to be very reliable, these vets. They have distorted views of what's normal. A certain amount of tartar they will accept. Look, the quality of veterinary dental care and understanding is abysmal, frankly. I've had so many dogs come to me where people have said, oh, I was at the vet 2 months ago. He didn't say anything about the teeth. On one occasion, I pulled every tooth out of the dog's head. He'd been at the other vet's 2 months previous, and I had to pull every tooth out. As bad as that. It had just been passed by as being, well, one of those things we might get round to. They'd identified there was a problem with its mouth, but they said, oh, there's no urgency. Then other situations where people will say, yeah, look, I was at the other vet, they pulled out 10 teeth. I said, well, they did, wonderful, but they should have pulled out another 10. Book it in, let's do it. Yeah, they unfortunately, now then, I don't tell you these scare stories just to alarm you. It's the reality, and that's terribly upsetting. So what I recommend people to do is go and read the preventative dentistry article that I was commissioned to write. The Centre for Veterinary Education, Dr. Doug Bryden asked me to write this down in 1992, December, and it was 1993 he published it. And it's in the articles written by me at rawmeatybones.com. So earlier in the slideshow, I showed you where you go to get the articles written by me. Well, it's in there. And you read that and you get to understand that. You read that 2 or 3 times until you got a firm understanding. Alternatively, you go to this book here, and it's in there, it's Appendix D. And it tells you about preventative dentistry. So you have to be your own dentist in large part. Go equipped with that information. I specifically say in the book, become your own dentist, understand what's going on before you go to the vet, so that you can get an idea as to whether this person is halfway informed and got the right approach or not. Alas, you're going to find that that self-same person has no idea about actually how to feed your carnivore. It's an extraordinary thing. So they're mostly got little or no proper understanding of the dental needs, and then little or no understanding of the nutritional needs. I'm sorry. I've been campaigning for 30 years to try and change this, but mostly silence. That is the trouble. We've had the information. It's written down. It's written down in these 3 books. This one, that's a new cover on it, but the old edition, this is what it used to look like. There you are, raw meaty bones promote health. It's all in there. So, and once you build up that understanding, you'll be in a stronger position. I can't reassure you any more than that, though, unfortunately, because it's a lottery as to what you will find at the vets. They accept as normal the most appalling pathology. They just don't get it. It's a shame. And or they want to do root canal treatment on a single tooth. £2,000 or £3,000 to fix one tooth and ignore the overall health of the animal. I mean, it is just monstrous. We are very much at a disadvantage with the power structures such as they are. So anybody listening to this, please, please, please go to the petition, which is on my website, and go and sign it and get the politicians to start looking at this, because the whole situation we find ourselves in is corrupt. The junk pet food, Mars, Nestle, Colgate, in conjunction with the establishment veterinary profession, is corrupt as all get out. They are saying that the stuff in the can and the packet is both suitable and safe and the best, and a certain amount of dental disease is inevitable. It's all awful. It's just not. And we can fix it. Look at Dr. May at the beginning of the presentation, full of enthusiasm to ensure that the animals stay well and healthy from the get-go. And yeah, you know, with information, go back to the learning pyramid, see all the different elements in that, deal with them. And it's really quite uplifting. It's quite a spiritual path that keeps even old grandfathers like me still going in the twilight of their life. So good luck, everybody. Yeah, post the results. Tell us the good and the bad. There will be some difficulties, no doubt. But share. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, have fun.
I will post the petition specifically on the page. That's what I'll do.
Yeah.
Everyone involved in the Natural Dog Expo gets to see it rather than just in this chat. I've just put your 2 website links, Pet Food Con and Raw Meaty Bones, in the chat if anyone wants to hop on and open those. And yeah, it's just time to say a massive, massive thank you for such an enlightening and empowering talk. Definitely.
Oh, it's my pleasure, and I'm glad that you liked it, and hopefully some good will come of it. Fingers crossed.
Mm-hmm.
Good.
Okay, brilliant.
Bye, everybody.
Yep. Okay, Tom.
I'll leave you the press.
If you can.
Bye, Tom. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I think you had the boxer, did you? And then I've got the other dogs.
Yeah, I had the boxer. Yeah.
Oh, good.
He was he was riddled with cancer. I saved his life at the age of 11. with water actually and oxygen, and then moved him onto raw meaty bones at the age of 12, and then we extended his life by 2.5 years in total. Never took him back to the vets. So yeah, it was incredible.
You did really well. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Well done, you.
and
Yeah,
it was
good.
spiritual. It was spiritual in the end, you know.
Yeah, most uplifting.
So thank you very much. I appreciate you.
Yeah, well, thanks to everybody who came here today. And we'll perhaps see you around. Good.